Welcome to The Crucible, Conversations for the Curious. I am Hamish, your host. This podcast is for anyone going through awakenings, trying to make sense of life, whether dark nights of the soul, needing to make life-changing decisions, struggling with addiction or critical illness, or simply realizing that their life as they know it is not aligned to values and purpose. You are not alone. You can get through this, I promise you. Life is far more beautiful on the other side. Hi everybody and welcome to another episode of The Crucible. We're going to have a really good conversation today. I met Eleri a few weeks ago and she's one of these people who has had more stuff thrown at her than most people get in one or two lifetimes. But she has shaken it off. She has stood back up again and she said, come on then. And she's had more stuff thrown at her and she's got back up again and she's smiling. She's thriving, she's flourishing, and she is an amazing human being. And Eleri, thank you very much for being on the show today. This is ever so kind of you. Thank you.
It's very kind of you to invite me, actually. Thank you.
Can you give us I guess it's going to have to be an abridged version of aspects of I fall down, I get back up again, all that kind of stuff?
Great song, isn't it? I can't remember who sang that. It was in the 80s, I fall down, I get back up again. It's one of those in Northern Soul things, isn't it? Well, yeah, I suppose I've been on a bit of a journey. So, in a nutshell, because this could go on and on and on, I don't want this to sort of, dominate. Yeah, everything was going smoothly. I've had a few career changes. I've been a lawyer, I've been a property developer, I've had various businesses in between, all enjoyed with varying degrees of success, until one fair day when I was busy being Midas, away with my little Midas torch and things couldn't go wrong. At the same time, I should add, as being Midas, I was very busy being the world's most successful alcoholic. At the same time, not in denial, I was very aware that I had a major drinking problem, but you know what, I just didn't want to do anything about it. Actually, it will become relevant as we discuss this element later why. But anyway, whilst I was drinking like an absolute idiot, my business was going from strength to strength. Literally from strength to strength. I mean, whether it was I had that power to sort of deceive or whatever, but I was making more money than I knew what to do with. We had a hedge fund, which was actually a feeder fund. And things are great on the surface, as is always often the story with many people who are alcoholics or in addiction or whatever. So one fair day, I had a phone call from the what was then the FSA, the regulatory body for financial concerns, so the Financial Conduct Authority today, saying pretty much, are you sitting down? Well, firstly, who the hell ever gets a phone call from them anyway? And secondly, they never say, are you sitting down? So I thought, well, this isn't a harbinger of great news. So the news was basically that the fund that we'd been investing in with our own money, with client funds, etc. and so forth, turned out to be Britain's largest Ponzi scheme. Well, it sort of wouldn't it? Because it's me. It almost didn't surprise me. It's like, yeah, because I think there's part of me, and you might recognise this, that it's almost like it's not really meant to succeed, really. There's that sort of weirdy imposter thing there that, so in my brain, it sort of translated to, okay, it was never meant to last anyway. But the real problem here was that for the first time in my life, there was no warning to this. There really wasn't a warning. And, we had a £42,000 mortgage bill to pay every month. We had nearly 68 buy-to-let properties, which we had to, pay the mortgages for. We had to pay our own mortgage. We had to pay car fees, school fees, etc. and so forth. So there was no warning. It was like someone had come along and said, well, sorry, all the money that you're going to get in your pay packet at the end of this month, you're not going to get now. And it's stopping right now. And there's no warning. It's a tap. We're just switching off. And that's precisely what happened. So literally, From one phone call to literally 3 seconds later, we couldn't access any of our funds, we couldn't access client funds, we couldn't access anything. The whole thing was shut down. Which, is what happens, right? I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do, because if you're the police and you're dealing potentially with proceeds of crime, I mean, that's what you have to do, right? You have to ring fence what you think is potentially the proceeds of crime and try and save what you can. So I'm not being critical of the situation, but it's just what happened. So for the first time in my life, we were left with a situation that we were dealing with, a minor surplus of, say, 300,000 a month, and having to suddenly find the best part of £70,000 with no money to survive. So, and that's what we did for the next 2 years. 3 years, we survived because of the money that we were getting in from our rented properties. That was quite tough because we had to really be on the ball there. And, financing and looking into, well, what investigations can we run here, what actions can we bring against the authorities, because they were being, not so much that they were doing the wrong thing, it was the speed at which it was being done and the lives that this was trashing. And I cannot emphasize that anybody listening to this in the Financial Conduct Authority, think upon one thing. You guys get paid every month at the end of the month, and you know that you can pay your mortgage. You think you're doing the right thing for people, but actually keeping them in the dark and preventing them from accessing their own funds so that they cannot pay their own mortgages is going to lead to one thing only, and that's only going to lead to them losing their own houses. In our case, people committed suicide. People's children had to leave schools, they had to leave university, they lost their houses. This whole thing took nearly 5-6 years and ended up in a criminal trial. Nothing to do with us, but it was 5 years, 6 years of agony for these people, and I mean agony. And I think people ought to think a bit more about what happens. These people are victims of crime at the end of the day. And I didn't see anybody, no government organisation step in to assist or to maybe create a moratorium for them, a safe space to enable the process to take its place, to enable due process to take its place, and to even determine whether any crimes have been committed, such that they would be able to be given this space to, just to be able to survive. I think people overlook that part. That's the humanity part of it. And so what happened to us, because we're us, obviously, and we're weird and different, we then sort of stumbled along. So we were lucky we had these properties. And then 3 years later, we discovered that people were growing cannabis in them. Well, of course they were, because, again, I just go, well, it's my properties, isn't it? That's bound to be, why not, I'd entered recovery by then, so one of the things that we are taught in recovery is to ask the question, the really sort of unerring question of, why not me? It's very sort of self-effacing. It's a coping strategy, really. So, that was quite an interesting revolution for me. Revelation. Well, it was a revolution and revelation, because as a lawyer, I'd always been a bit square, I suppose, in my upbringing. I'd always been a bit, toe the line. The law is always right, do the right thing, never lie, tell the truth, because, that will free you, and because that's the right thing to do, right? Mm. Until I came up with a situation where the police actually thought I was behind everything. I was Mrs. Big. And I'm thinking, ooh, what is this Mrs. Big? This is all sort of weird. Okay, look, I've always been a bit different. I've always dressed differently. I've always been relatively outspoken. I speak various languages, including Russian, which puts me into a sort of very unique category of lawyers, international lawyers. And, I'm relatively good at doing what I do because I get on very well with people and I can unite people of all different continents, shapes and sizes. I put that down to my degree, which was modern languages and European studies. A big part of that is cultural studies and understanding the psychology of different cultures. So that's a skill that I've always had, and it served me very well. So the police's view was, well, hang on a minute, you've lost all your money in the hedge fund. True. So you must have done it because how else would you have survived? I'm thinking, okay, well, fair enough. Then do we have this thing called evidence? Maybe, is that maybe a stretch too far? And then began this sort of dual dawn of realization of how the law really works. Now, that was probably, of all of this, that was probably the most disappointing, and I'll say that, disappointing realization that life doesn't work. Not only is it unfair, but it doesn't work as it should. These institutions do not work as they ought to work, with the sole objective of finding the truth. Not seeking to listen, people may think I'm guilty, fine. That's almost irrelevant here. What is relevant to me, and always has been, is finding the truth. Because finding the truth is important. It's important to humanity, who we are as human beings, who we are as countries, what our democracy looks like. Can people trust us? Can they really trust in our word? Those things matter to me. And then I suddenly realised that, unfortunately, I and my partner found ourselves in the middle of a conspiracy. And conspiracy laws have been changed. And, apparently you only needed to know one person in the conspiracy, and that was it. To, embroil you in a full-blown conspiracy, the operative outcome, you have no idea about. Now, those laws apparently were changed. I might get my dates wrong, but it was around about 97. I think it was a Tony Blair initiative, and it was, looked upon historically, designed to try and capture as many terrorists as humanly possible, and bring them all into the wider net, and that sort of thinking. But obviously what's been happening is those laws are being used time and time again to grab anybody and anybody who may or may not know somebody. And of course I knew somebody in the conspiracy. I knew my property manager was involved. Because I'm stupid and I was an alcoholic at the time, decided to have an affair, as you do. But my mother referred to it as a delightful distraction. I think she's very very Victorian in her sort of analysis of life. But, it was one of those things that you can only understand this if you're a real alcoholic, right? There you are, drinking like an absolute idiot. Your life is shit and falling apart in front of your eyes. And this random person comes along and you think, well, why not? Why not have an affair? One of the things alcohol, if people are not aware, does to you, it distorts completely any moral compass you might have. It's really weird how this happens, and I don't wish you guys to go out there and experiment just to discover this, but that is true. You have the mind has an amazing ability to justify, if you like, your actions. When morally, and I knew morally, what I was doing was repugnant and wrong, and I hold to that now, and that is the case. Anyway, I started this affair, and I didn't start an affair with just anybody, did I? I started an affair with the guy who was responsible for running all the cannabis factories in my properties. I didn't know that at the time, and neither was I complicit in that. The reality is I wasn't believed, is the truth. Now, leave that aside, but that is the truth. It transpired that my property manager was involved. The police knew and were prosecuting him for different things. So we ended up going to court originally for, the ostensible idea was that, I'd lost all my money and decided, well, how am I going to survive? I'm going to hand over all my properties, or majority of them, to this person, because I loved him, to grow cannabis for me. Well, that, and I said, well, that's great. That's lovely. Thank you very much. Now we've had the Daily Mail headlines. Can we actually get down to the Observer facts? Where is the money? Well, nobody seemed to be that interested in where is the money. That seemed to be a sideline conversation. Now, don't forget I'm a trained lawyer. I do like to deal in facts, not fiction. And this is my life we were talking about. I'm thinking, well, if I'm apparently guilty of all of this, that's fine. But you do need to proffer some evidence. Now, it was interesting. Nobody seemed to be interested in any evidence. I think what it was, by now, my barrister thought I was some sort of because I speak Russian, right, fluently, right? And I think they must have thought that I was part of a James Bond movie, I was. Of course, I fitted the bill of Mrs. Obviously Big, and of course she'd have an affair with an Albanian, because why not? Well, who knows? Why not, accepting the fact that you're a raging alcoholic and you'd have probably had an affair with a post box at that point. If it had shown you any form of attention that would have had any chance of just raising you up from the shitty life that you were in, even temporarily, to make you feel better. But that's by the by. So anyway, so we were prosecuted. Nobody believed that the question came up about money, and the prosecutor just said, "Oh well, Miss Cosslett is very intelligent. She would have probably scribbled it offshore somewhere." Well, okay, well that's great, isn't it? Isn't that great? Hello, do we not need some actual evidence? Is the burden of proof not on you? Have to prove this. And then it dawned on me. I thought, actually, no, it's not, is it? That's in the textbooks. That's what you're taught in law school. The reality of it, and this is where they're very clever, is all they need to do is convince 12, people, random people. The trial bar length went on and on and on. So, look, most of the people, these split into two camps, either, the unemployable, or those who'd retired. So we had nobody who, any business person on that jury, I can guarantee you would have gone, hang on a minute, that's a lovely story, that she loved this man and she would have handed all her properties, but you can't on the one hand have, Eleri Cosslett does nothing for money, unless it's for money, and then suddenly she's completely changed her whole identity overnight, and there is no money and we can't prove money, but she's guilty. There's something not right about this, right? And there was something, I don't think there's a lot that wasn't right about it from day one. Like, for example, did we actually do it? For example, I didn't see very much effort being undertaken by the police to try and really interrogate forensically, is it a possibility that we've got this wrong? And then I didn't realise, again, stupid naivety, because I was just naive, that there's this thing called proceeds of crime. And I remember then my lawyer saying to me, the first thing he said to me was, "You do know why you're here, don't you?" I sort of looked at him sort of quizzically, no. Well, you're here because you're the only person in this conspiracy that actually has any assets left. You're needed for proceeds of crime. Because when they find you guilty, they will take all of those assets and they will distribute it. They will pay for the trial. And of course, I didn't realise that the proceeds of crime element of all of this is a period of time. You'd think, would you not, that the proceeds of crime means exactly what it says on the box, namely the period of time from which they can show that you have benefited from a crime, let's say. And it ends upon the period that you stop benefiting from that crime. But of course, they changed the law. So your proceeds of crime, they can actually go back and take from you things that you were given on the day that you were born. So they were able to, of course we were found guilty unanimously because, you just needed to put me in front of a jury, one look at my CV, and they've decided, yes, of course, she's guilty, she speaks Russian, this is very strange. So, so off they went and basically took the rest of our assets, and that was job well done. And that was it. So off we went to prison, which I actually really enjoyed, contrary to what everyone says. Because I went with the right spirit. I thought, well, I can't change this situation. I am powerless, right? So there is no point in me fighting an unfair system. This is not about me. This is just about, this happens to people all over the world, day in, day out. For me, the question was, what do I do with this situation? How can I live my best life here? What can I do to serve others? What can I do to serve myself? And I started teaching women to read. And I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it, Hamish. It was the best thing. If I had to name one job that I really loved, of all the things I've ever done, it's that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was that you don't often get in life an opportunity to. Some of us talk about, things. I never did volunteering in Africa or anything like that, but friends of mine who have talked about similar things happening to them where there's nothing transactional here. There's one person teaching somebody to do something and being able to observe and watch how that person's life changes in front of your eyes. From suddenly realizing, well, actually, I can read. I can understand. I can do these things. and watching their confidence change and watching their whole demeanour change. When you witness something like that, that is definitely from another planet. Now, that is priceless. You cannot put money. And for that, I am grateful that I went to prison, because I would never have experienced that in my life, ever. And it's got to have been, it definitely is probably the most satisfying thing I've ever done in my life. I met some amazing women, really amazing. And I have to say, too, amazing officers, right? Because I am a huge fan of prison officers. I think they are seriously overlooked in terms of the work that they do. It was like our home. It was home for us, and the little gates that we had, the little spats like families. We treated it like it was like being one big family. We were always falling out or not or falling in, but we really looked out for each other, and I laughed like I've never laughed, like a jelly belly. I laughed because it was like, for the first time in a long, long time, I was given the grace of a period of time just to reflect for me. It was almost like my body and my head had said, right, you're not going to stop through your own accord, so we're going to stop you for you. We say, don't we, in things like recovery, we say, the higher power, for me it's a higher power anyway, it works in mysterious ways, very mysterious ways. And don't tell me it doesn't have a sense of humour, because it's so sure as hell does. It might not work in the way we want it to work, but it gives us everything we need, and it gives us the real opportunity. So anyway, so that's what happened to me. I came out of prison with nothing, 43 quid discharge grant, and suddenly I found myself in a situation, oh my God, I've got to start businesses again with nothing. And the most important thing that I learned was that what happens to an individual, which is always, it was subsequently informed my interest in human beings. You're no longer this great lawyer. You're no longer this hedge fund manager. You're no longer this property developer. You're no longer any of that. It's almost like Anno Domini, BC AD, that sort of thing. And you're now a convict, and upon release, you are an ex-offender.
Yeah.
That is your identity.
Mm.
Now, of course, you can choose. I mean, certainly that's maybe how society views you. Now, I wasn't playing that game, unfortunately, for society, because I had to, it was a tough time. I made a conscious decision. I'm going to tell people about my criminal convictions. I can hear them sort of rooting around in the back, thinking, yeah, whatever, here she comes, the convict, yeah, whatever. But fine, so I've managed to set up businesses as a direct result of coming out of prison. No help from those who were supposed to help people coming out from prison, because of course I was the wrong type of prisoner for them. I was like a bit too intelligent. I was the wrong type, because they're still busy in this old 18th century world of, prisoners have to be poor people. I'm always fascinated with that, this idea of, let's strip people of their humanity, let's strip them of their dignity, let's strip them of every single congruent asset that they require to survive. And let's be really surprised that we have a reoffending rate that's going through the roof. Because guess what, folks out there? You too would turn back to crime if you were stripped with nothing or down to nothing. Because that's what we do as human beings. We are designed to survive. And that's precisely what I did, Hamish. And I did it because I've got luckily I got into recovery in 2012. And that saved me, because it gave me a psychological framework and a belief system that sat way above compass morality of the law or people. It sat in the universal. And these laws were universal, and it didn't matter to me whether I met people on 12-step programs, or whether I met people who were religious, or whether I or spiritual. It didn't matter. We all had this one thing in common. We had a true belief in a power greater than us. And I love that concept to this day. I love that concept. I'm aware we haven't done much talking. I've done quite a lot of monologuing. What was supposed to be the 5 second or the 5 sentence highlight as to a diatribe. So I'm sorry about that.
I think that was wonderful. I think you've painted that to be taken anyway. Injustice, poor me, beaten down, stripped, as you said, beaten, left for dead, and then expected to, well, who gives a shit? You're a criminal, and you've gone, nah.
Don't think
You know,
so. Not today.
not today, thank you. Yeah. Um, and that's why I introduced you as remarkable, because I haven't heard all of that story, and that is astounding. But none of that surprises me. The way the humor's come out, I love the fact that you are helping people to
Hmm.
learn to read. That is wonderful. And another thing, that's 3 people I've had on the podcast have been to prison for 2 for drinking, 3 for drinking.
Oh God. I mean that. To be fair, I mean that.
But they've all said the same thing. I was in a box and I had time to reflect. I didn't have to deal with all the other stuff. And in fact, the 4th person, her body broke down and she was in a wheelchair for a year. Same thing. She was in a box. Her body said, if you're not going to stop, I'm going to stop you. Um, Arguably, when I went to rehab, I was in the same thing. I was put in a little box where I had to process, think about things, feel things, tap into that higher power, which I didn't understand through the AA. It didn't relate to me at the time. But the theme's there. You have had to, they have had to, we have had to make sense of something and then turn around and have a choice. Am I going to be the repeat offender? Am I going to thrive? And you've chosen to thrive, as have these other guests. But that's a really hard decision to make, because, you should be bitter. Most people.
Oh, yeah, do you know what? That is, you see, now this is really interesting for me in terms of psychology. One of the things that stood against me throughout my trial was that I wasn't bitter. I was not willing to point fingers at others when I was invited to do so, whom I could not say, hand on my heart, that they had done something. I was going to tell the truth and I was going to stick to my core principle values. And I can remember thinking in my cell, or in the police station actually, and thinking about this really deeply, that when you plead not guilty, because I was putting myself up there for an 8-10 year sentence, and the only question that came through my mind was this: you have to live with your decision for the rest of your life. And that, and I remember, to thine own self, therefore, be true. And all I had to give was the truth. I can't control people, places, and things. I can't control what people may or may not think. I believe in karma now, and I know that one day justice will always prevail, because it always does, because the universe ensures that it does. It may not be in the time frame that we want it to prevail. Note, we all know, that's an ego moment, but it does always, if you look back over history, it does always prevail. So I know that the truth will come out. But, I also thought that because I have no attachment to material things, believe it or not, although people are, constantly, or were constantly saying about me, I don't do anything if it's not for money. I'm thinking, well, they just haven't got me, have they? Because they haven't understood me. Again, that's not my problem. You have to let it go. You have to let that go. Because it's the not letting go of that bit that will kill you in the end. Because it will live inside here, and you'll constantly be thinking, but I didn't do it. Why don't they believe me? Why don't they believe me? Fuck knows why they don't believe me. I don't know, and it's got nothing to do. It's not my business, actually. All I can do is put myself into action, controlled by a power greater than me, and get the fuck on with it. I've been dealt the cards that I've been dealt with. If you've got a higher power in your life, that means you've got massive energy in your tank. And you can overcome anything. Because the trick in life I've learned is, these were just, let's be honest, I was like an addictive gatherer of things. I could become, I find myself even today falling back into addictive behaviour. Ooh, what are the stats? How many viewers have you got? How many clicks have you got? Who's saying what? It's addictive behaviour. It's the same nonsense. I had to stop doing that. It doesn't matter how many people join us or don't join us. Who cares? What matters is the right type of people join us or don't join us for the right reasons. And, because we're taught from day one that our job in life is to be good, go through school, have a good job, go to an excellent university, and then start the institution process. We ought to be taught, and I wish to God I had been taught this, because AA taught me this, is we should be thinking first and foremostly of how can I serve this planet that I live on? How can I help others? How can I contribute? What can I do to help others? And I think that's why, there was no bitterness. I would have been very interested to have seen what would have happened to me had I not been in recovery, had I not been in an AA, and whether that bitterness would have happened or not. But I never did have that bitterness because I just thought, well, these are people who unfortunately are seeking a quick outcome for their own gain and benefit because they're in a system which encourages the points, mean, prizes sort of behaviour pattern. So I can't blame them. Every single one of them got promoted, and part of the proceeds of crime stuff gets given to the local prosecuting police force. But of course, they have to. One day, we all have to meet our maker, don't we? One day, we all have to seriously look into. That judge will have to seriously think: did I do the right thing? Did I preside over innocent people potentially going to prison? And if so, am I going to atone for it or not? I don't know. It's not my business. But, everybody will have their opportunity one day to make their amends or not. But I don't live in the past. What is in the past is in the past. They're just things. I'm more interested in the present. I'm more interested in enjoying life day by day because life is bloody brilliant, right? It is bloody brilliant. It's totally unpredictable. It's designed to send you completely potty if you let it. But it gives you the most amazing, amazing opportunities every single day. All we need to do is open our eyes and get rid of the noise. If we can get rid of the noise, the dangly golden things, follow me, I'll make you a billionaire. And if we can actually focus more on what's in here, I learned that it's not an outside job, it's an inside job. And that actually all you need in life to survive, and I proved this. I left prison homeless with 43 quid. All you really need is a strong belief in a power system which is greater than you, to be able to rely on it when all else has failed you. And a strong sense of purpose and self. Who are you? Why are you? And what do you like to do? Which will lead you to that space of, and you will know when you've got it, you will feel that you're doing the right thing. Because guess what? You will be happy. And let me tell you one thing, happiness trumps making millions all day long. All day long.
Yep. I love that. Yeah. I don't really need to qualify that. You're spot on. It is, isn't it? When you are doing what you enjoy doing, when you're happy, it becomes effortless. It doesn't equal easy, but it becomes effortless.
My
It's
mother,
aligned.
my mother was a school teacher, and every day she loved the Tudors and the Stuarts. She just loved them. It was like a soap opera, wasn't it? It is a soap opera, really. But you knew, and you could see the way she taught that. Every time she taught it to a sixth former new, she would bring it. It was like listening to Lucy Worsley or somebody like that. She'd bring it alive. The joy for her was the carrying the message bit, transmitting that piece of history, that time in history, different ways of looking at things, and watching those kids turn into critical thinking beings, coming up with their own ideas and daring to think. Now, that for her gave her so much joy. You could see she wasn't doing it for the money, that was her life, and she loved it. And there's so many teachers that I had. I was very fortunate who, and again, coming back to those police, not so much the police officers, but the prison officers, 100%. These were people that were paid very little money, but they had a passion and a commitment and a dedication that I have never, ever, ever seen before in my life. And I think that, these people were extraordinary, extraordinary human beings that changed lives.
I want to go back to, because I think this is very important. I want to go back to the moral compass, because I remember saying I have lost my moral compass when I was drinking badly. I did not know. I don't like right from wrong. I didn't know what was moral. I had no bearing. I was a ship without a sail or without a rudder. I was just existing. Explain that to me. How do you find your moral compass? How do you know here? Because it's not really here. How do you know when you are aligned with your purpose and with what is important, and to bring back that sail, that rudder, and ultimately happiness? What is your comprehension of that? And you mentioned higher power at the same time, so maybe that is part of it. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is part of it. I think we're all born not good, not evil, but we all have a feeling, an inbuilt chip that tells us what's right and what's wrong. I believe that. Maybe I'm wrong. There might be some mutant genes, who knows? But I think in the vast majority, we all know what's right and what's wrong. And the way I try to do it now, I don't always get it right, is always ask the question behind the question is, why are you try and seek out the motives of why you're doing something. And that's a bloody uncomfortable little journey. No, of course I'm not being manipulative. Of course I'm not trying to get someone to join Silvertree. Of course I'm not trying to do that. Well, of course I fucking am. Obviously. But and that's okay as long as the motive is an honest motive, right? But if you're trying to cover it up with, but there are lots of benefits to joining Silvertree and Love One Friends, which are good benefits, right? But the hard question that I always have to ask myself is but what's really driving you? What's the motive? Now, this is really important for me because I can easily slip back into what I call drinking behaviour, and this is what I do. So I'm very good up there at covering up I'm trying to help somebody. Right, fine. Great. Well, if you're trying to help somebody, Larry, what you should be doing is just helping them, giving them the options, and letting it go. So why have you phoned them 20 times and chased them? Oh, by the way, I'm not bipolar, but these are conversations that happen in my head, right? And I have to self-examine. So I have to examine my behaviour on a daily basis, often hourly basis, right? Because I slip, and I'm very open about this with people. I slip into, because sales for me is an addiction, right? It's more is one is never enough, right? More. But the funny thing about it is, okay, I've got more. Then what? I feel great. No, I don't. I want more. I think I've sort of noticed by now the parallels after many years. But that's what I've got to do. I have to ask myself the real true motive, and I make myself write it down, and that's horrible because there's no getting away from what the real motive is. And look, it's not like a self-flagellation process here, but it's a process of discovery, and then you can at least try then to correct your behaviour. That's all we can do. None of us are perfect, but at least I'm trying. And I think that's the thing. And then resentment is another one for me. I've got to watch out for that because somebody said, a very good friend of mine said, don't let people live rent-free in your head. I thought, what are you talking about? And then sort of suddenly the concept has come to comprehend the concept over time. But resentment can be created by an expectation. And they say, he's taught me a resentment is an expectation under the construction. And if you really draw it, really par it really down, that's exactly what it is. If you go back to your motive, you want to control the outcome of this process. You're not coming, as we say, to equity with clean hands. You're coming with a premeditated outcome that you want to control. Now, these are very, it takes you years to get, well, maybe not, but these are things worth practicing, because you will get to the true source. You will know instantly what your real motive is. And you'll be given an opportunity to correct it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I try and do. And it's hard. It's hard because it speaks directly often against your ego. My biggest problem today is my biggest problem today, and always has been, is my ego, because my ego is like obviously intergalactic and no bounds. So my problem is that I have to really knock that ego out and just say, well, my thinking, let's be absolutely honest with you, and actions haven't exactly got me to some of the best places. Some of them might be my fault, some of them might be other people's fault, so what? But I had a part in it. Whether we like it or not, I had a part in it because I was there. So it's really watching that ego and learning, and that's why I keep going to my program stuff, because I'm being reminded on a daily basis to right size my goddamn ego and try and get rid of it to the best that I can. And once I can get rid of ego, I can allow that higher power, that learning of structuring life in the right way, to come in, such that I'm working. I know this might sound bonkers to some people, but this is how I do it. That I'm working in service to something greater than myself, which is purely good, that I can trust in. This thing is good, it's not bad. And when I do that, I feel happier. I don't have any anxiety. There's no stress. And I know I'm working for the best possible outcome. And that is a bloody brilliant place to be in. No money can buy that. That is a place of safety. That is a place of happiness. You've taken away the negative thoughts and negative feelings, because you don't allow yourself to have those. If you do have them, you write them down immediately and you deal with them immediately, and you find out, where did they come from? Are they coming from fear within you? It might be, for example, a huge thing today, fear of financial insecurity. Okay, what if we were to do, and this is what I did when I built my businesses, I had to throw myself entirely on the mercy of this higher power thing. And I had to do life completely differently. Now, there is no way, under ordinary circumstances, that anybody with my, background would have risen to where I am now, because it just wouldn't have been possible. So I have to accept that there has got to be some other involvement in my life that has nothing to do with me. Everybody says, oh, how do you do it? No. I do nothing, by the way. That's rule number one. I obviously haven't done very well on my own steam. We know that by the evidence. The evidence clearly demonstrates that. Therefore, this has all been done by something much bigger than me. And only when, and in proportion to, when I let that thing into my life and I've managed to shut up and listen, really. That's not to say it tells you, oh, you can have no opinions, but, again, we know where this sort of stinking thinking leads us to. Oh, I have an opinion, and I'm going to, I don't quite agree with that bit of the big book or that bit of the program, so I'm going to superimpose my own bit on it. Of course, this sort of nonsense thinking. My best thinking got me to the gutter. But you know what? My best thinking did give me something. It gave me a gift of desperation. And it's through that gift of desperation was I able to start living again. I was able to rebuild my life. And it's quite tremendous how quickly it's happened. But it's got nothing to do with me. Let's be very clear about that. Nothing to do with me.
I like tremendously the bit where you said you have to stop and check. That is one of the great things about being in recovery. You have to make sure, as you said, am I doing this for gratuitous pleasure? Am I doing this to numb the fear, to hide, to escape, to repeat the stories? Am I doing this because, I've actually got to deal with something, and it's far easier to do that with a couple of drinks down my throat. That personal query every day, every hour, is hard, but it's a damn sight easier than going back to drinking and all that chaos. So absolutely. And yeah, it's not fun. And there's nothing more uncomfortable to admit, yes, I am an arch manipulator. I absolutely am. However, if I'm manipulating to serve, I'm encouraging, I'm empowering. I'm not playing with words. There's a different energy to it. I can still use an aspect of that trait. I'm a people pleaser. I love helping people. If I'm doing that if I do something for you, then you're going to give me back. That's the unattractive side of it. That's the greedy, that's the yucky side of people pleasing. But if I'm doing it, as you said, for no agenda, I'm in prison teaching someone to read and you're watching their confidence do that is, I'm not doing that to get something back from them. That's just the byproduct. And it is a different way of thinking, isn't it? And it is a different way of being, and it doesn't make sense, but it is really empowering.
It doesn't make sense because we have been, I think, conditioned to be autonomous. And I think that's one of the most dangerous teachings that we could ever have taught to children, that we are, you will power through, you will get through. And there's a time and a place for all of that, but we need other people. We need to learn to leverage socialization and other people's skills. You must have seen people, and I'm not one of these, but people who are just brilliant at getting people to do things and how they operate. I look at those people and I think, wow. Now, I'd have been screaming within sentence number 2. What do you mean you're not doing that? Why? These are your orders. I just don't have the temperament for that. So that's not a me thing, right? But part of life's journey, I think, is recognizing what are you really good at and what are you really not very good at. So think of it like this. I've always find this quite interesting. So, we're all shoehorned, sort of in a way, by our own desires or whatever to become, the doctors, the lawyers, the whatever, accountants, the business owners of this, that, and the other. And everybody attributes a value to that. Well, let's be absolutely honest. We only attribute a value to it because we think that equates to a really good person, a really good career, financially secure and pillar of salt of the earth and society.
Mm-hmm.
Has that ever wondered? I mean, I wonder about this all the time. So, well, why can't we attribute the same value to a cleaner or a lorry driver? Because what if that surgeon doesn't really want to be a surgeon, really? He'd like to be a refuse director or a cleaner. Half the problem in this world is we love to label everybody with things, and we create our own little. We spend loads of times trying to get rid of hierarchies, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone is equal, and then actually, by the same token, we are very busy recreating the hierarchy around money, and this is all just bollocks because there's no such thing as money. It's energy to start with, and once you realise that money is energy, when you emit at the right energy level and you're happy and in your flow doing what you need to be doing, people will come. People will come. That's what happens. You see this in politics all the time. Most of them are clearly not in their flow. We know this with the stupid Labour Party. Sorry, I'm not going to get political, but there they are screaming at the Conservative Party. Oh, look at all those freebies, look at all this, and they go and do exactly the same thing, which tells me that the real motivation behind them wanting to do that job is not serving. It is power. Now that is bad, and I wonder sometimes, if in schools we could focus on people doing things that makes their heart sing, and then pay them. Can you imagine what would happen in a world, Hamish? I often imagine this in my little weirdy head, where everyone was paid the same, right? Now that would be interesting, right? Now
Wouldn't
that'd
it?
be really interesting. Everybody was paid the same. Everybody would have 2 cars. Everybody would have 2 lovely holidays a year. You'd have your 4-bedroom detached house. Don't worry about it. It's done, right? Everyone's the same. Yeah, okay. You want to go off and build a business, then you can have your mansion. That's fine. But in the main, everybody is the same, right? And there's loads of jobs to choose from, right? You can be a cleaner, you can be a lorry driver, you can be a psychologist, a psychiatrist, you can be a surgeon, you can be this. Within the job world, forget industry for 5 seconds, right? Self-made people. I wonder what would happen.
Mm.
Really wonder what would happen. People would then do what they want to do, right? And that's the problem. We're in a world where you've got loads of people who are just doing totally what they shouldn't be doing, which tells you why they then try and fulfill that hole in their soul by seeking out more money, let's say in the private sector, because they're trying to make themselves feel better.
Or they seek out alcohol, or they seek out food, or drugs, or reckless abandon, just to
And squashed, name but two.
absolutely, yeah, just to put some fun, maybe simple as that, put some fun and some happiness back into life. Yeah, what a harrowing thought, isn't it? Mm.
But actually, isn't all this actually so much more simple than we've actually ever thought about it?
Totally, yeah, absolutely.
None of this is complicated, and the answers are staring us right in front of our eyes. So we need to seek the motive now of why do our politicians, for example, or people generally, what are they truly scared of? And it will come down to, you know this from recovery, and I know this, it'll be fear, financial insecurity. Oh my God, what will happen to the school fees? What will happen to the horses? What will happen to because that's what we've built. We've built a society that pegs itself on how wealthy are you.
Yeah, yeah. That's it. What do you do? First thing you ask somebody, nice to meet you. Hi, I'm Hamish. What do you do? I'm a lawyer. Oh, well, I'll chat with you. I'm a builder. Oh, well, yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And you know what? When I was in Kazakhstan many, many years ago, one of the most beautiful things that we did there, we had a Thursday evening dinner club on my veranda because I had the nicest veranda. And we had a symposium of the most beautiful people there. We had we had the British ambassador and his wife. We had me. We had a couple of lorry drivers. They used to pop in and out, sort of who were hilarious because they used to go, they were just lovely. We had, who else? We had a couple of construction people. We had the head of Balfour Beatty. The point is, we had some seriously high end people, very, very, very important people that in the city of London, the lorry driver and them would never have mixed, right? And, people like the head of the World Bank and people like that, And yet you had staffers too, normal people and some local people who could speak really good, like interpreters, and who could speak really good English. And what I loved about those meetings is all the barriers were brought right down, and these
Mm.
people became human beings. And suddenly, the lorry driver was just as important as the head of the IMF. They were talking about their annoying kids with their really annoying habits, and finding out that actually what creates us, what keeps us human is the identification. So we focus on what unites us, not what disunites us, or whatever the word is, separates us. And that was just a total amazing. We did that. I was there for a year and a half. We did that every Thursday night, and I'm still in touch with quite a few of them now. And they always come back to me and said, you know what, that was special.
Mm.
That we've always remembered that as because we were able to talk to normal people. They were able to talk to us, and we were able to all find out that actually we're totally the same. Guess what? Surprise, surprise. And yeah, that was just lovely, but I think that's the thing that we are now in a world, I think, and this is sad, of we're constantly trying to divide and conquer is what's happening. Everybody has to have a label. You're either ADHD or non-ADHD. You're either this or you're that. You identify as a tree or a post. I don't care whether you identify as a whatever you are. Who cares? Who are you? And who are you really?
Mm.
Or well, who do you think you are and who are you really?
Yeah.
And are you able to really show us who you are? Because the sort of stuff that I do, as you know, is all about, I do a lot of work with businesses, small businesses, but startup businesses in particular, to help them get on track. And it comes down to what we call the 5 S's, and it's like that cocktail party line that you were talking about, you get them to stand right on the doorstep of the department store and say, imagine this is your department store. Who are you? What do you really want to do? Not what somebody else has told you you should be doing, but what do you really want to do? And the amount of friction you get there is unbelievable. But I always say to people, you can't work with people, I can't work with you unless you're going to be brutally honest and prepared to do the work. Because if you're not prepared to do that work first, you'll never set up a successful business because you don't really know why you're doing it. Your modus operandi will change every single minute of every different day because you will be so fixated on all the things that's going on out there, the noise. You'll be following this one minute, following that the next. You'll be in chaos and you'll be horribly, horribly unhappy.
Again, that comes back to recovery, where you've had to start making those choices. I don't remember the steps in the big book, the good book, the big book.
Good book. You can say good book.
Now
Yes.
that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
That's it. There you go. You've got a new business idea there.
Yeah, in the good book of 12. Yeah. But you have to make amends. You have to check in and what did I do wrong? Yes, I did that. I was doing the best I could. I've said this countless times on this show. I used to throw empty bottles out of the car while I was driving because that was less shameful than going home and hearing them going into the tin bit dustbin. I don't do that, but that action was less painful than going home and being caught with bottles of booze. That was the best I could.
Hey, it doesn't beat my story of rocking up in my X5. It was like, the token X5, the last possession I had, and actually ramming the goddamn car full of bottles, and then doing, almost like a moonlight flit at one of those, those Sainsbury's supermarket bottle banks right at the back of the car park, as they used to be, thinking that no one's seen you. Well, there I was decanting, hundreds of bottles into this thing. And then this woman pipes up in a lovely little Mini and deposits 2 bottles. I'm thinking, now that's how it probably should be, right?
Yep.
On a number of different levels, because what that woman had done was that she had factored her, cleanliness routine, if you like, or housekeeping routine as part of her life that was important enough to see through to the end and do the next right thing. And that's one of the things that recovery's taught me, is to, when I'm in a turmoil in my head, bring it right down to the next right thing. Really bring it down to the next right thing and do the action and complete it. Don't leave it half done. Do it completely.
Yep. Wind it back to the beginning. I'm same. I have to do the same thing. It's like it's all gone crazy. I have to go, right back to what happened at the beginning. Breathe in, breathe out, and repeat. Take a step forwards. It's literally like sometimes I'm having to relearn to walk every day. But it does. It gives you that place to start again, doesn't it? And not make the same mistakes, to see things differently. And as you said, it's that self-care. Yeah. And then...
And journaling, when you feel these negative thoughts come into your head, write them down. Because writing them down is writing them out of your head. Just very quickly, you might have an acronym, for it, big black dog, all fine, no reason, negative energy arrived, fine.
Yeah. It's little coping strategies, isn't it, to replace those coping mechanisms? Yeah.
Totally.
Oh, it's been a fabulous conversation. And it is, isn't it? It's being aware. It is, we have to be a little bit more aware, a little bit more cognizant, a little bit more curious, a little bit more observing of what's going on around us. What are we doing? Our habits. But you get used to that practice. You get used to making that effort. As you said, you get used to that journaling and checking in and saying, am I being a dickhead? Am I being an idiot? Am I being manipulative? Why am I being manipulative? Why am I being a dickhead? And
Yeah,
then,
that is important. The why am I being X, Y, or Z? Because that's the real reveal there. It'll be because of an insecurity, something probably within you isn't right. Or certainly that's my experience. It'll be like I'm mirroring my internal emotions onto others through my actions, is what I found. And that was a big revelation for me because never really done the until I was about 5 or 6 years sober. I'd never really done the hard work on that, and that's an area I need to practice. I mean, this is stuff that I need to practice daily, and I mean, or by twice daily. And if I am out of sorts, I need to seriously remove myself from the. And I've had to do this recently. Remove myself from the area of tension, just temporarily, and go for a walk around the block and really meditate on it. And the way I do it, I just say, look, this is the problem. I have a problem with this person, that person. It's probably to do with me. This person triggers X, Y, and Z in me. And I ask my higher power, again, might sound totally bonkers, but this is what I do. I ask my higher power to take that away from me. And I would say, never has it failed. Never has it failed, yeah. As long as I've been willing to do the addressing bit of what's not working and why, because that's really critical. You can't just say, oh, I don't like this person, please take that away from me. Well, why? That's your problem that you don't like. God's not going to, God, your high power's not going to do for you what you were too lazy to do yourself, because there's a process here, and it's actually a process of sheer discipline.
mm-hmm.
That once you get into it, it becomes a way of life, and it becomes instinctive.
I say the biggest thing I've learned this year is to slow down, and that gives me that chance to think. But I still struggle to slow down. I still struggle to make that effort. But when I do, I can. Yeah, it becomes. I can actually see things before they happen. I realize that if I do that again, I'm going to get that outcome. I'm not going to change the outcome doing the same thing unless I start to change something a little bit.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. I've had to do that this year too, and learning to slow down has for me been the singular most difficult thing to do. But actually, they do say there's like in the old adage, slow down to speed up. And that actually is so true. So for those who are in any doubt about the verity of what's being talked about and the efficacy of what's being talked about now, think back to your school days. Off you battled on the bus at 8 o'clock or 8:30 or 7 or whenever it was. But you're back home by 3:30, 4, whatever it was usually. The school used to finish at 3:30, right? Just have a think how much you as a human being actually achieved and learned during that relatively small space of time. You weren't working 16 hours a day, and that I've often thought about that, and I thought, yeah, because the difference was between now and then is then they made you have processing time. That was given just as much authority as the doing. Because by not processing, and that is the one unifying thing that we are never given today, we are never given sufficient time to process things properly. Hence, we're always in a rush. We're always on to the next thing. We're always on to the next, and we don't finish things. And when psychologically we do not finish things properly, that leaves our brain in a state of mess. So that's one of the best gifts I think you can give to people or we can give to people is to say to me, learn to slow down, to speed up. Because what it will do, it will enable you to focus very quickly on the things that matter, the things that really matter. Get rid of the noise, And before you know it, you're focusing on what is important. And before you know it, too, your business will be thriving because you will be focusing on the right things because they feel right, not on the wrong things. And this whole nonsense of, and it might be, get rid of social media for a while, get rid of it permanently, or choose the channel you want to broadcast. You can't be everywhere all at once, and neither should you be. Tell people, I only do LinkedIn, I don't communicate in any other way. That's okay, as long as people know. It's all about managing. I mean, we're living in this world of techno crap at the moment. It's out of control. But we have a choice. We don't have to join in with it all. We know that those who are joining in with it on a daily basis are becoming very ill.
Yeah.
We know this. The evidence is right in front of our eyes. So why are we so busy like lemmings doing the fear of missing out? Fear of missing out. If an idea is a good idea, it will reach its right audience. The other thing I've learned in business, and this is hard, this is probably one of the hardest things, right? So, people, you might have come up with the best idea in the world, right? And there's no reason why it should fail, but it fails. That's just life. I've stopped trying to control the outcome or what other people think of my business ideas. If they can use it, great. Because I've started to look at it more in terms of if the universe wants it to happen, it will make it happen. All I need to do is stay humble and stay in service. I need to get out of the way. That's all I need to do. Nothing else.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, the moment I do not do that, Hamish, things go tits up very, 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 very quickly. Because my ego comes back whoosh as if it was no, and that is the same ego that makes me drink. You see, that is the same voice that goes, "Oh, Larry, do you know what? It's been nearly 12 years now. Tell you what, one day at a time. Why don't you just have a drink? Yeah, why don't you just have a drink? Fine, have a drink and just see what happens." And watch the whole house of cards tumble down.
Tumble down, yeah. I love your thing about school, and I just remembered one thing about school. What do we have a lot of at school? Playtime.
Time.
How often do I put playtime into my day? Before 9 o'clock and after 6 o'clock. Yeah, or if I get out for a walk. Yeah.
Huge on playtime in junior schools, which so much so that I'm sure you can still remember some of those, the games that we used to play in and the excitement you used to feel playing a game of rounders after a bloody dull maths lesson. The way that if you think about it, they're managing very short periods of time. But what they've done is they've elongated time such that those are crenulated the fortress of your memory and they live there. The fun that we had I just don't know what it is, but this is the thing. But it stopped, didn't it? The moment you went to high school, that fun in many ways stopped. They stopped teaching us. Do you remember, I don't know what they did in your junior school, but I used to love the way they taught things through projects. They taught people through projects. Learn about the Vikings. You had to build the ship. You had to paint the things on the wall. So there was art, there was woodwork, there was a dressing up, putting on a play. There was learning about their cooking habits, their home habits, their battles, what they, you were sort of living, breathing, and exploring it from like a 360, which created a real interest. I just wish they did more of that in school today over a longer period of time. I was joking with a friend the other day. I said, what they should do is rather than have economics lessons in the sixth form, they said, right, this is the problem, solve it. No right, no wrong answer. And no books allowed. And I don't want any Keynesian or whatever theories. I don't want theories. I want to hear from your inner mind, to the best of your ability, how you would solve it. And you have the right to change all the boundaries of the world if you want to. You can change governments. Nothing is out of bounds. And I would just love to see what would happen. And I bet you we would have some really awesome, enduring, life-sustaining and permanent changes made for the benefit of the planet and the human race.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I can almost see people doing that In a business environment, you're running a workshop and say, right, here are the rules. This is what you've got to get to A to D any way you want. Yeah. And it's got to involve fun or this or that. You've got to do that. Yeah.
And what would be interesting in business, right, is this, and you'd have to tell them, right, and I want you to write down every single negative thought that automatically came into your head for reasons that you couldn't do this, this, and this, because those are just as important, right? Because those will highlight the thinking problem areas or the construction problem areas of how society has actually been organised. Because I suspect a lot of this is an organisational issue in terms of how we have organised ourselves. And until we are going to have the really brutally honest conversation around these things, and I mean brutally honest, primitively honest, back to children basics, nothing is going to change because we are trying to change society and people with pre-known solutions that used to work for other methodologies in other times. Now we know, Einstein tells us, this never is going to be successful. It will never work because we're using tools of the past to cure the present. And the same person, we say so in recovery, we say the same thing, the same person will drink again.
Absolutely. I've been reading Robert Fritz, his Path of Least Resistance. What an amazing book. There's no cure. There's no solution to drinking. There's no solution to so many things. You have to change foundations. Um, and then, by creating. And when you start creating, as you said, you look at what doesn't work, you create something. The energy's different. I'm not solving, I'm creating. And you're bringing magic, you're bringing change, you're allowing it. And it's expansive.
It's hugely expansive, and it's also very, very cooperative. And yet, you try doing that, and I think this is where a lot of people like me just disassociate ourselves. And I'm very interested in politics, but I look at them and I just despair. I look at it as a child, I look at them as children in kindergartens. It's a very that type of sort of, it's very, very, very childlike. You've got to support us. We're giving you this 3-line whip, and if you don't, you're expelled. Well, what is this? I don't want to be governed by puerile, idiotic, self-centered and self-seeking, unevolved individuals, because that's unfortunately what we're talking about. We're talking about unevolved human species with agendas. This is not good. It's not good for them. It's not good for society. And it's definitely not good for humanity. Never before have we experienced, I don't think, a time where we've had so much wealth concentrated in the hands of the so few. Everybody was up in arms, weren't they, about Jeremy Corbyn? Oh my gosh, redistribution of wealth. Now, I'm not sure anybody's talking about redistribution of wealth, but there were some very sound arguments, I thought, his in his work, body of work. The only problem there was, once again, is ego. If it's not my way or the highway, what you really need is evolved human beings who are capable of working in consensus with others. Guess what? For the best outcome.
Yep.
Not
for the party.
Not for the party, but for the people. I would love to see a political situation where we get rid of all parties. The thing is, parties for me is a thing of yesterday. I can agree with people of all different parties. I don't fit into a political party. I never did, because I want the best. If you're truly motivated to help your community, let's come up with, ideas.
Yep. Isn't it? It is. It's if you can only vote for the red because the red is the way, even if the green's way is even actually better, but I can't vote for the green way because I'm red. That is just bonkers. That is not forward. That is.
If you were living on Mars, right, or whatever, they must be looking at us going, "Oh dear, look at them, poor little creatures." They're actually, because what we're doing is we are actually self-imploding our own body of work. We are becoming narrower and narrower and narrower, and the money world is sticking together narrower and narrower. and is seeking to take over the power from the poorer and the poorer. I've always said to you, there is no need, for example, nobody in this world should be poor, and that's the end of it. Nobody should be poor. But when you've got an IMF and when you've got a European community and when you've got all these people who are self-seeking and busy, not that they're self-seeking, that's not fair on them. They're stuck, is what it is. They're stuck in reverse. They're desperately trying to find ideas about the future, but they're stuck. Because the ideas are not from things that have gone on their table in the past. The ideas need to be fundamental overhauls. They need to be back to basics, take those kids back to the classroom and say there are no rules at all. You can change everything. Don't think of the consequences, just think of the outcome and what would happen. And there's none of that happening. It's all about control economy. How can we continue doing what we did before? How can we continue manipulating what we did before? And I think that, the proof of the pudding is people are now disengaged.
They are.
To the degree that you can tell by the amount of people that vote or how voting goes. I mean, hello, seriously, do all of those people who voted for Labour really want the Labour Party? No, they don't. No, they don't. They were just fed up. It was a protest vote. That's like all of these things are protest votes because people don't really know what they think. Because they don't take time to. Because again, they're supposed to be shoehorned into one party or the other. That is a wrong way of thinking. We need to be encouraged to think for ourselves and to put forward the best possible idea that will serve our country, serve our community, serve the world better and work with other people who think like that. It's really quite simple. It's not actually as difficult as people may think. Yes, there will be ruffles. Yes, there will be noses put out of joint. But somebody needs to be brave to create this brave new world. Aldous Huxley's ubiquitous words. But, somebody has to take the reins of change now because we are just surrounded by idiots, sadly.
Yeah.
And worse than that, they're unevolved idiots. And by that I mean people who are not willing to self-examine their own progress. That's where it becomes dangerous to me. And be open-minded and humble enough to say, look, I don't know everything. I want to learn from others. I'm curious. That is a sign of great leadership for me. People who go, do you know what? I know what I know, but I'm curious to learn what you know. Because maybe together, and all of us together, we can do something great here.
I think you've really nailed it on the head, haven't you? When you're prepared to be open-minded, you're prepared to listen, you're prepared to have your own belief structures and ideas challenged, and maybe, wow, that's wrong. As soon as we realise that what someone else's idea is actually better than ours, and we have that humbleness to go, hey, I like that.
That's
I know,
it.
yeah.
And that now, you see, that is the thing that that's the number one offender. That's something I come across now all the time. It's like, oh, not invented by me. I mean, you can see it from the funders these days. Innovate UK is the classic example. They wouldn't even know innovation if it hit them on the head because, they are not coming at this from the right. According to them, it must be something with a SAS balance element to it. Why? But they can't ever answer the question why and whether it's appropriate. It just needs to be in there. It's a bit like an A-level project. And then, it must have an AI component. Why? Why? This is it doesn't actually make my blood, but I don't get cross about these things anymore. So detach. I've talked to myself too, because AI might be the right thing for a certain business, but it might totally not be necessary for somebody else's business. But neither makes it more or less innovative than the other. Because innovation isn't putting AI into somewhere just because you've been told it needs AI. Innovation is about thinking critically through a problem and deploying a workable outcome. That is innovation. Not, it has AI in it. That is the antithesis of innovation. And that is what is stymieing business today, because unfortunately, and that's where the bad elements come in and the bad actors, where people say, well, you can only get funding if you include this, 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 and this. So before you know it, things that are funded as so-called innovative are not enhancing our economy, are not moving. These things need to be measured to the progress of our economy, not on what we think it may be just because Elon Musk has declared it so. It might work, it might not work, but the point is it works for Elon Musk because Elon Musk is somebody that goes through that evaluative process, by the way. Detailed, and that's why he can tell, this is why I'm doing this because if I want to do this, this, and this. He's very clear about that.
It's a cognitive way of thinking. It's doing it with intention, as you said. It's teamwork, and doesn't have to have AI in just because that's the current buzzword, and it might work, it might not. Yeah.
And indeed, you might need AI, but it doesn't make it less or more innovative. It's just AI is a tool.
Yeah, that's it.
That's all it is. It's an implementational tool that if you know how to interrogate and prompt it correctly, it may work for you, but it may equally not work for you. But it's got nothing to do with innovation. Innovation is coming up with. It's so simple. Think Leonardo da Vinci and developing the helicopter. I think it was him. I've probably got this wrong actually. For some reason in my brain, I'm thinking, did Leonardo da Vinci firstly design the helicopter?
He's the guy who drew them. Yeah.
Yeah, he
had
did.
the concept.
Yeah. So, but this is innovation. These are people who thought beyond what is possible now. That's innovation. Or people who can, I identify that there is a problem. This is how I intend to fix the problem. And this is why I need help to fix the problem. Not do I or do I not have bloody AI involved. That is not innovation. That was somebody else's innovation. I mean, it's innovative what AI has done, but it's not the be-all and end-all. And it certainly shouldn't be a measure rubric for whether or not you get Innovate UK funding or not. It's just absolutely crazy, But I'm hearing that from so many sources now. And again, unfortunately, for me, back to my recovery, that's an area then that I have to sort of step away from. Because what it does, it encourages all the bad actors within me, ego-based character actors, to start on the retaliatory, thing. And that's not a good place for my head to be. That's just not a safe space. Let's just let them do what they're doing and just let them get on with it. Stop trying to control them.
I think you've brought it back nicely there. It is, isn't it? There is very little that we can control. We control our reactions and our actions and how we respond to people. We can't control a lot more. And that is when we work from that, it's super empowering. Resentment, you mentioned that a while ago. That is, for me, that is not an Achilles heel. That is chopping my head off at the neck, and that's it. That's all that's left. It's just a terrible place to be, and it's watching people do stupid things that I think, getting resentful is a really slippery slope for me, where I can get into that negative behavior, into that addictive behavior. Go back round again. We're back to keeping an eye on ourselves, being curious, checking in, all those really simple things that just allow us to not really care less about if that's going to happen or that's going to happen, because that's beyond our control. And from that space, we're free, aren't we? We're free of that noise, and we can just get on and have fun and slow down a bit. Yeah.
Because actually, see, and this is something I was told in early recovery. I remember somebody saying to me, I wish you a really slow recovery. And I was like, what are you talking about? But now I understand what that means, because the fruits of recovery are fantastic, And my AA sponsor said to me once, she said, look, why don't you just try, right? And see what happens if you were to run your business through AA principles. Just literally, just try it as an experimental area. I know you like experiments. So just take your arms off the rudder and let it run it for you. All you have to do is play second in command and do what it tells you to do. And just see what would happen. And I have to be truthful, I started off doing that and it was great. And then and as soon as I experienced some success, my hands were straight back on that rudder. Straight back, within seconds. So my journey in business has been very much this idea of, push, pull, push, pull, push, pull. Now, I think really at the dawn of my 12th birthday, I need to make a decision, right? Because they often say, it takes you a long time in recovery to really get to grips with some of these tools properly and just to have experimented and tested things out. And I think I'm at that point where I've really got to make a commitment now to, right, either because my AA sponsor has made a lot of money. I mean, stupid amounts of money. And I didn't know that actually until very recently because she doesn't talk about it ever, which I think is amazing because one of my problems is I think it's a feeling, it's an inner feeling of not being confident, maybe. I sort of need to tell, I have a sort of burning need to tell people. We haven't really explored that yet, so we don't know, maybe for another chapter. But she said to me, once you can really learn to really let go, and realize that your only purpose in this world actually is to be in recovery and to help other alcoholics. That is your only purpose. And help others who want to set up in business and help them, but don't waste your time helping those who don't want to be helped.
Yeah. Yep.
Try and learn it from that, because I think you would stop the lag, you would stop the hanging on, you'd stop the pain of, why aren't they doing this? This is mad. But you'd stop also wanting it more for them than they want it for themselves.
Yep. Yes.
Because that's a people-pleasing trait that I have. When you can see it, because I have my gift, if you like. I mean, we talked about, what is your superpower, but in a way, one of my superpowers is that I can see things already completed. You give me a business idea and I can tell you within probably 2 or 3 seconds whether it's a goer or not a goer. It's either going to be a copycat business, in which case you're going to need a lot of funding and it's only going to last for 4 or 5, 6 years, or it really is something that is going to knock the socks off people. But because I can see it completed, and I get very frustrated when I get the excitement of seeing something completed and I think the person presenting it is just like deadpan and doesn't even realize what they've got. But it's none of my business, actually.
That's a curse.
It's a curse. Yeah, it's a bit like being maybe when you work in energy, right? And you can see into people's souls, you can see their energy fields, and you can read them. And you'll know whether they're telling the truth or not. And then there's that temptation to interject and go, well, actually, that's not really what you think, is it? What you really think is this, and this. And again, I've spoken to a number of people I know who do this, and they've all had to say, look, we have to discipline ourselves, that we do not read people. We don't do it because it's so easy to do, and for that very reason, what will happen then is you'll step in.
Tell me a bit about your business and what you want, what you do, and how you serve people, and how people can find out more about you and what you do, because I think what you do is quite remarkable as well.
I run a business called Silvertree, Silvertree Exchange. So they can find me, you can email me if you want to. That's Eleri, Eleri, at silvertree.co. And that's Silver, VA, tree, not ER. And the whole premise of Silver is that, again, when we came out of prison, we had no money, so we had to create our own, which is precisely what we did. We had skills, but no money to deploy those skills. So I had legal skills. My ex-partner had amazing IT skills. We had no money to set up businesses. So that's how it started. So we created this exchange. He built it. I mean, he's a genius with IT, and we built this currency system. So he built my tech for me for my business, my legal firm, Maguire Mitchell, which enabled me to start off and get first clients. But I paid him by way of this currency that we use, this silver currency. And it's very simple, really. 1 silver is £1. So we operate in the UK. So, whatever we charge, I'll just explain at its basics. So the idea is that many businesses are not operating at full capacity. So there are gaps. Now, what's spare capacity? So if you go to a shop, everything that you see for sale right there in front of you is actually technically spare capacity. Because until it's been sold, it hasn't, the person who owns the shop has had to go out to the wholesalers to buy it all in, right? So it's a minus on the ledger, so it's spare capacity. Same thing with an empty table in a restaurant, let's say. Every moment of every day, that thing isn't sold, people aren't sitting at that table, that's spare capacity. I mean, the restaurant still has to run, you still have to pay your staff, you still have to pay for your utility bills. So, same with a hotel, a spare room. Once the opportunity of renting it out that night is gone and nobody's taken it, that opportunity to sell it is gone forever, right? So all it is a way of looking at things differently, right? So you've got your cash business. On average, that might give you 60% out of 100% capacity in a month. So you've got 40% there, which you could sell, but you haven't sold, right? You haven't sold it. So what do you do with it? What most people do with it was just say, oh, God, well, that's shit, isn't it? And move on. What I'm saying is, there's a clever way to do this. If you were to trade that 40%, the services, so for example, the shop, for example, if you were to sell that stuff on the Silvertree platform to we've got hundreds of members now, they would then be able to pay you immediately in our currency, silver, or it might be a blend of silver and cash, it's up to you. But you would be able to sell that stuff out immediately. And you would then use that silver to buy stuff that you need instead of having to pay cash to enhance your business. And it might be accountancy services, it might be legal services, which is what I do. It might be graphic design service, it might be social media services, it might be VA, it might be digital, whatever it is. Everybody could be trading in this way. And this is the plan, as far as I'm concerned, of how you eradicate poverty. Whilst you are singularly, as a world, tied to this thing called cash, don't forget, back in Sumatra, when cash was invented, cash was never meant, it was an accounting methodology, that's all it was. It was not a social construct, it was not a who are you anyway moment. It was actually a demarcation of the amount of bales of hay that you were owed in payment, is what it was. You remember, this was when they went from bartering to essentially cash. Now, bartering doesn't work because what happens if I want something but you don't want what I've got? I want what you've got, but you don't want, you've got a mismatch of needs. So that's why money was invented. And so, well, why can't we have other forms of money? As long as tax is being paid on it to the government, which is the right thing to do, the government has no problem with exchanges like this because they like it, because they see it as encouraging business, not detracting from business. So that is why I think every business in the world ought to be part of this movement with a view to the more people we get involved, before you know it, Tesco's going to be involved, right? So they always get involved in everything. Starbucks will be involved, the petrol station will be involved, and before you know it, there won't be blooming financial problems because councils can pay their staff partly in silver because they can then charge council tax partly in silver. They can then pay their contractors partly in silver. And before you know it, you've got access to a whole new swathe of money, which has the same value. Nobody's doing a tax dodge. This is not money laundering. This is pure, simple, sensible, basic economics designed to ensure that our economy will be sustainable for the future and that we're not governed by what the hell ever goes on in Ukraine or the blooming Gaza thing, or we're too volatile, we're too intermingled with everybody else. So we need to find a way to become self-sustaining. This is called growing up. is what it's called. It's evolution. Silvertree isn't the only people who do things like this. There are plenty of exchanges around the world, but why can't we buy property in this currency? Why can't we go and buy a car? If people, if you pay, I don't know, 20 grand for a car, whatever it is, and that person needs that 20 grand in silver to go and pay a digital marketeer to do a year's worth of content for them, who cares? So that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. So it is a digital platform, a cashless digital platform enabling people to trade with our currency for the benefit. The only benefit to them is to make themselves more cash rich. That's the only benefit. It is not, oh, you want Silvertree billionaires. It might be for some people, it might not be for others, but that's the point. So I wanted to do something with my partners that was fundamentally going to change the way we do business forever, which is fair to all. It's not based on who are your parents and which school did you go to. It's not based on, how much money have you got in the bank and how much collateral have you got. It's based purely and simply on how good at you are doing what you do. Simple.
So I go back. I have a cafe and I want to pay my accountant. I sell coffees for silver. I pay my accountant with silver.
Exactly.
She might come back to my coffee shop and then buy coffees back again. So it's simplistically, it's another currency. It's like using euros rather than pounds.
That's all it is. That's
Yeah.
all it is. Yeah, and nobody needs to be scared of it because that's just like it's another currency, just like using euros instead of pounds. What we need now to do is to enlarge the scope of people in the audience that know about it and see that this is as well as not instead of cash. It's got nothing to do with taking cash away from you. Quite the opposite. It adds cash to your purse. And of course, the other thing I do, as you know, is I run Love Entrepreneurs, which is a fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a business network, it's a fellowship where we share with each other our experience and our strength and our hope and our knowledge so that we all contribute to helping each other become better business people. And our secret sauce there is the Big Fix, where we invite businesses, all shapes, all sizes, to come along and say, hey, I've got a problem, I've got an idea. What do you think, guys? So we do a bit like a sort of blend between a Dragon's Den thing and a sort of live soul mapping. And they do that over 2 days. And the idea is that the audience becomes the business owner, and the audience has got to solve the problem for the business owner, and that's quite good fun. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the solutions we've always got for everybody is, you should join Silvertree because it's a brilliant currency and it will reduce your cash expenses dramatically and get you loads of new clients. And then the second thing we do in Love Entrepreneurs, so we do the Big Fix, then we do business planning for people, and then we get them funding. And we use the SEIS mechanism, but we do a blend of Silvertree funding. So Silvertree and us have got a relationship where they will pre-fund a lot of our business ventures, which is fantastic. And we can get people funding very, very, very efficiently. Again, I was horrified to learn more about the SEIS scheme and again to learn about the tax breaks that were happening there. Thus, they were only encouraging and attracting people who wanted to invest in businesses that actually make losses so that they could offset those losses against their forward tax income. Now, to me, that is a scam.
Mm.
That is scandalous because it goes against everything I stand for, namely to help businesses thrive and survive. I'm not interested in helping the billionaires anymore. There's enough stuff out there for them. We need to help grassroots businesses who are deserving of our help to find and empower themselves, to find a way to trammel through the morass that is the mess that we have today. And the only way to do that is to step aside and be different. They always say, don't they, if you want to stand out from the crowd, step aside.
Yeah.
And do something different.
Do something different. Yeah. I mean, when I joined Love Entrepreneurs, it was amazing. Yeah, as you said, just to explain a bit more, you invited me and explained my business, what I want to do, how I want to do it, and then it wasn't intimidating. It was questions. Had I thought about this? I had a dozen people helping me with my business, which was wonderful. And then you all scurried off, came back again, and said, "Try this, try this, try this, try this." And just like, and I had to write it down. But as you said, you gave me that information back, and it's a group of people who are serving other people. There's no agenda beyond supporting each other. You're not trying to take anything off people. Um, I think it's fantastic. I'm very glad I found you guys, and that's the reason we're chatting the way our worlds bump together. But I think it's a supervision, and I'm getting my head around love, and I'm getting my head around the Silvertree because again, it's the same thing. It's a different way of doing
It's a
something.
tool. All it is, I mean, again, it's a tool that is innovative. And what you really want is a whole bunch of people making it their own. Because, of course, don't forget, we want, or rather, I want other people to come to me and say, well, why don't we do this? Let's do that. Great, do it. Because I'm going to learn from you guys. The whole point is I don't want, and this is again the flat structure that I want. I learn just as much from other people as they can learn from me because there's only a limit to what I only know what I know. I don't know what you know.
Mm.
But I do know that together all our ideas will be brilliant. But again, I'm noticing, and this is maddening really, that people are so used to being told what to do by a leader, and they're not used to devolved ownership and control of things where they actually are. And I think this has got something to do with the way people have been brought up now and the times that we're living in. Everybody always needs to be told what to do. Whereas what I want to try and do is I want to empower people to start thinking. Let's make this my own. Let's integrate this currency into my business and see what I can do with it. It's that sort of thing. But people, which is why you're seeing that so many businesses now thrive and survive because of AI, apparently, and SaaS project stuff, because they're being dictated to how to think, and what to do.
Mm.
Now, to me, that is one of the most unhealthy developments that we could ever have because we've stopped thinking. The moment we stop thinking, we stop creating.
Yeah, and winding right back to the beginning, this is something that you've created from necessity, from a series of unfortunate events, and not becoming bitter, not becoming enraged, not becoming suicidal, not drinking yourself to all those opportunities you had just to say, fuck it all. You haven't done that. You've created something, you haven't solved a problem, you've created something brand new. And it's got a life of its own. It really has, and that vision. Yes, you're suggesting people take accountability and responsibility for their businesses, for their lives. Empowering. The day I stopped drinking and empowered myself and got help with it, everything changed. I am like you. I'm grateful for that gift of desperation. Wasn't so much fun, but out the other side, it is remarkable. Um, and it's things have to change. And I think, yeah, I think what you've shared with us today is really exciting, really, really exciting and hopeful and empowering and, yeah, truly, truly remarkable.
Remembering one thing, though, remembering one very important thing. This is not a one man job, right? This is very much not a one man job. And, if it wasn't for the spiritual structure that I have around me, that gives me all the people power that I need.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. It's not charge on by yourself because you can't do that. Yeah, I think this has been a really, really fabulous conversation. We could talk all night. Um,
God, for your poor listeners, Hamish, your poor listeners.
I think they will be saying we want Eleri back. She's got so much to share with us. Um, Very quickly, where can people find out more? You've mentioned where we can find you on Silvertree, but where else can we find you? Are you on social media or anything else like that?
I mean, I'm rubbish at social media, to be honest with you. I would just invite people to WhatsApp me in the first instance. I mean, the reason I'm rubbish on social media is I have so much stuff that I've got to respond to. So, in the first instance, what I ask people to do is just to contact me on WhatsApp.
Well, we'll make sure those details are in the show notes. And your superpower. What is your superpower from life, through life, because of life, or however?
I think really, I mean, I did say to you when you asked me this at the beginning that it would come to me during the course of this discussion. And I think I go back to what I mentioned it. It's that ability to see things that others don't. So see completion that others don't. So I can see the full project dynamic. And I think that is something that is a real skill because it's not a skill, it's a power. It's given to you. It's not something you can develop. You just have it or you don't. I can innately feel into will something succeed, or I can see something. I suppose energetically I can feel, is this thing likely to work or not, and if so, what does it need in order to work. I've yet to be wrong about that, certainly in recent businesses, and it needs more development, more fine tuning, and more time spent on perfecting it. But that's it really. It's that ability to see things, which means when I work with people to get funding, or when I work with people to do the business element of things, I know that if they follow in the steps that I've taken or see that need to be taken, they cannot not but fail. The problem comes when they take over and start to know better than you. And this is and I run this like an AA sponsorship thing, really, where it's got to be, yes, it's a two-way process, but ultimately I am the teacher. That's why they're paying me. They are the pupil, not the other way around. Because if you swapping it around onto me, if you gave me an inch, I'd take the M4 off your hands, and I'd be telling you how to do your job. I'd be because that's just how I'm. That's the alcohol. That's the madness inside me, right? And so you have to keep it really tight to keep people under control, because it's about time management and imparting that knowledge as quickly and as efficiently as humanly possible. And it takes time, and you have to search out the right kind of people. But if they're not self-searching, if they're not humble and prepared to listen, not in a, oh look, I wield a massive stick sort of way. I'm not talking about that kind of, but if they're not prepared to listen to experience, then I'm not going to work with them, because I can't get them the results that they need.
Yeah,
and
makes sense.
it's my reputation on the line, and I'm quite choice about who I work with, because I need to see that, humility within them of being prepared to listen to what I've got to say. I've worked with the partners that we work with now for over 10 years, and I know that they deliver every single time on the button.
Brilliant. Well, I think that is an amazing gift, and yeah, when people are prepared to learn, prepared to listen, and work from experience. I mean, that's where you've got that experience. I've got that experience in my field. We've developed that through blood and sweat and prison and this and that. And yeah, I think remarkable. Truly, truly remarkable. Yeah. Eleri, thank you so much for being on the show. I've enjoyed this conversation. As I said, we could go on all evening, but it is time to stop because we're almost on the 2 hours. But thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, humor, and yeah, definitely being not normal, because it don't work no more. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Crucible, Conversations for the Curious. If these powerful stories of transformation resonated with you, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this show with anyone who you think could do with a dose of inspiration for their own journey. I would really appreciate it if you could make any comments on your favourite podcast platform as well. That helps me reach more people. All the important links and information are in the show notes below. Thank you very much for listening, and catch up with you soon.